Hey everyone, this one is a breakdown about how to do the coming of age story and that of a teenage life within video games. Hey everyone, you're joining me, your host, Max Pears. I hope you're doing well playing and making the games that you love. It's a pleasure to have you joining me here today, absolutely fantastic. And this is a really cool one. Sadly, this episode will be slightly rushed due to the fact that I've got to leave here to go to the other office, and then from that office I'll be flying back home as well. So there's a lot to do in such a short span of time. And I'm trying not to miss my train as well, which is obviously the most important thing here. And this one is a really cool one because I've actually just picked up this game, and it's an indie game called The Friends of Ringo Ishikawa. And I picked this up on Switch. I didn't know that it is available on Steam as well, but I picked it on Switch because it seemed to be on the go a bit. And I did actually want to do an episode similar to this on the Persona franchise as well, because they also do a really cool thing. And it's talking about how to do that of a teenage coming of age story, but also reflecting that as well within your study mechanics. Because as a teenager, I'm sure most of you who actually listen to this are no longer in that form of education, some maybe in higher education and others maybe in work, but I don't think we actually have anyone who is listening from a high school perspective. But I thought it was a really interesting one. It's set in Japan. I don't think it has a time period, really, but it's a really cool one. So I'm going to be using that as well as the Persona franchise to kind of talk about how to do studying, but also how to reflect that of life through their gameplay, because these two really spoke to me in the sense that I had not thought about teenage life in a long time. I'm now 27. Wow, it only seems to be getting up and up from here, the number. But I just think it's really interesting because it's been obviously so long since I have been a teenager, and it's really interesting to see how this is actually reflected in that of gameplay. Now, in other forms of medium like the coming of age story following a group of high school characters is quite a traditional point, I think, and it's one that's done very well and one that is actually referred to quite often, I think, in many other mediums. But not so much here. Now, when I'm saying that, there are characters within their teenage years or tween years. However, they're not actually balancing school. A lot of them is this character, taken to another world, for example, or you're generally playing that of an older male in most AAA games. So to see them actually try figure out how to show these high school moments, how to show that feeling through gameplay, was something that really fascinated me and something that I think these both do spectacularly. I think they've got some fantastic elements to take away and to learn from. And it is this game, shall I say, the Friends of Ringo, is quite cheap to pick up. It's not that expensive, so I do recommend checking it out. As I said, you can pick it up on Steam or that of the Switch as well. And I think it's fantastic. But let's get into why and how they have done the mastery, in my opinion, of what it's like to be a teenager. The first one for me is the big thing that both Persona and Friends of Ringo do very well is it's up to you to manage your time. Time management is something that's really important. It is a resource for the player that they need to manage themselves. Now, there might be characters suggesting things what to do, such as Persona, where they tell them, you have a time limit to finish a dungeon or a certain objective. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to just continually doing the dungeon. You can do much more, or you can leave it. You can choose when to come in and do it. And similar to that of the Ringo is the fact that there isn't any parental figure or a figure such as Navi informing the player, you have to go do this is your mission. And I think this is really interesting because when you think about when you were a teenager, that was something that you had to do. Your parents may have raised you or instilled you, or your guardians, in a certain way that you should probably work, whether that be telling you to do your homework as soon as you come back, or just really not interfering. All of these things have an impact on that of what we need to do as teenagers. That's part of growing up, learning how to balance your life. I thought this is great because now you as a player have that clock that is forever present, or that calendar in Persona 5, letting you know that a day has come by. And you've got to actually start to wonder, have you spent it in the correct way or manner? I think that was a really good one, is that time management. And because of this, it also splits things really well up into what is important to you as a character, as well as the character that you may be taking the role of. Thinking of, for example, friends. Friends seem to be a big one in both of these games, because your friendship groups tend to be, I don't want to use the word closer compared to the adulthood, but more in the sense of you will see your close friends most of the week. Whether you choose to see them on weekends or not, you're probably going to hang out with friends to pass the time throughout all of your high school life. And I think that is fantastic, because here they're having to make you choose that, where you're now spending an hour, for example, with one of your friends, but now you can't go spend your time studying or working, but you've got to know when to do this. And then it adds that element in of studying, which I'm going to go in a little bit deeper a little bit later on, because studying is a major part of your high school and learning experience. I think that's a really interesting one. Again, showing you the time management, and another way that it helps reflect that is through your statistics. In Ringo, you have a percentage of how much that you actually know per subject. And I really do like that style, because the fact that you now are aware of what's your strong and weak subjects. In Persona, it might be that of maybe currency from doing your job, connections that you build with your friends to unlock new mechanics. All of these things there that you have to try figure out, how do you choose to spend that time correctly, which is why also I think they do a great job of making you want to replay these games as well, because there's a lot to learn from that you may not have done from another experience. So that's the first one there, time management. And as I said, I really like that there isn't really much of a guiding figure, so I think that's a great one and a great design decision from both of these incredible games. Next is one that I just mentioned there, which is the terms of studying. Studying is very important in education, as we all know. Good grades that people tell you lets you go to, maybe a good university and then therefore get you a good job, etc., etc. I think we've all heard that. Even me just re-saying that just brought back memories of hearing that over and over and over again. So we all know that. It's something that's ingrained with us. So I think it's really interesting is the fact that you have to choose to study. And what I like with this as well, in some regards I think you could play with it a bit more, is you choose to study in both of these games, but the thing that you'll see take away is your time. Now, the time has changed, whether it be by an hour or X hours in the day, and they don't let you control the studying. And I think that's good for one reason, in the sense of that I like how when you're supposed to be studying, then you won't be doing anything else. It's sometimes hard to focus. But what's really good for this is the fact that this is showing you how to study, that there shouldn't be any interference, that it should be you just doing and focusing on that task. And I like that. And as I said, one of the consequences of studying is obviously that of your time management resource there. But what's really interesting, and I've only played a little bit of Ringo thus far, but compared to that of Persona, I haven't seen any tests yet. There may be some later in the game, I don't know. But in Persona, you are asked questions during your class. And this is the thing that I think could be improved upon with the study systems in Persona, for example. is that you have some choices to make. You are asked a question, and then you get three choices, and you pick which one that you believe is the right answer. But the thing is with this is they're asking you on subjects as a player that I have not studied in a long time. And if you think about yourself as an adult now, the things that you'll tend to spend your time learning on will be that of your hobbies, as well as things that maybe further your career as well. Not much in terms of extra stuff. Obviously, there's things like the news, and that educates you on world events. But it's very rare that you go back to some of these subjects, or should we say all of these subjects that you learned as a kid. And the thing that I'm not a fan of is, say if I've spent and chosen to use my time management to study, is the fact that you get these questions, and as I said just then, I do not know much about history or certain topics of history or certain time periods. And it may be on that or science. I don't really invest much time into science because I don't use it on my day-to-day life, nor is it a hobby or interest of mine. Not insulting science, just it's not one that I spend my time doing. But I've spent a lot of time in-game studying, giving up my resources and this, but it doesn't actually help me when it comes to these choices. What I think, or would have liked, and maybe I missed this, if I did, please come and correct me, but it's the fact that I have spent time doing this and studying, and it doesn't give me a hint. What I would prefer is if I would spent my time correctly and done X amount of studying, or in the case of Ringo, got a certain percentage on this topic, then it would give me a hint to the actual answer in the questions, rewarding the player for choosing to spend their time on their academia or academics. And I think that would have been a way to improve the system. I still think what there is good, but if you're going to test the player, make sure that the studying actually has an impact in it, because otherwise you're testing the player, not the character. And the fact in Persona and in Ringo, we're not playing ourselves, we're playing a certain character. So I think that needs to be enforced as well. However, that's just a suggestion of mine to improve it, but it's still an amazing system, I think. And I do enjoy the fact that this has come here, that we have these systems within the game. I think there's some cool stuff still to take from it as well, because when you get the answers right, in Persona, you get a boost on some of your stats, which is fantastic, as well as the dialogue will change with certain characters, which I think is great. What Ringo does very well is in your classes, you can choose to write down your answer, not do anything, or enter your thuggish behavior. But if you decide to study all the way through your class, then you will get double the XP or percentage increase on that certain subject than you would studying at home. I think that's cool because you get to embody this character of, do I want to do this? Because for Ringo's sake, his character, should we say, doesn't want to progress a normal life. They want to become a part of the Yakuza. So you're thinking, do I want to do this, or do I want my Ringo to have more options? And I think that's a really interesting one for it. But I think there's some really cool stuff to take away with that. And I really did enjoy that from the studying aspect. I think there's some really cool elements towards that in terms of, again, little things where getting a question right can increase your, the dialogue choices, where compared to that of Ringo, you will get double increase for paying attention in class. So some really nice stuff there. And how we interact with our school environment is similar to that as well. And those are two of my favourite interactions in terms of representing that of school life.
Love games? Love game design? We do too. So why not help us here at Level Design Lobby spread the word? With Patreon, from as little as $1 per month, you can do just that. And new for 2019, we have more reward tiers and even more awesome perks on offer, such as access to our community Discord, level design weekends, exclusive talks by professional designers, one-on-one sessions, and much more. Sound interesting? Then head on over to patreon.com/leveldesignlobby for more information and to pledge your support today. As always, we'd like to say a massive thank you to all the game gurus who've backed us so far. It's thanks to your generous support that we can continue to grow, pursue new opportunities, and bring you new, awesome, and exciting content. So thank you. And now back to our regularly scheduled program.
Next, I want to talk about that of figuring out the systems of the game as well. This goes back to the first point in terms of not having guidance. I think what I like about this in Ringo and also in Persona is sometimes you do feel overwhelmed with the amount of systems, amount of things that you can do and should do. But what I think is fantastic about this is that's part of what it is to be like a teenager as well. The fact that, if you look back to some of the dramatic moments in your teenage life or that of things that you thought were big deals back then, it's all quite melodramatic in the grand scheme of things. But at the time, it felt much bigger. Like these were grander problems, that these were things that were overwhelming you. And I really liked the fact that that was a feeling here, that in Ringo, for example, you're just kind of dropped in and you're trying to figure stuff out. Even the fights, for example, that you encounter, you will probably lose most of those fights. And that's what I really enjoyed, is the fact that I'm overwhelmed from all aspects of this. Trying to figure out how to interact with certain friends. Where are my friends in certain time periods? Where can I go? And then exploring this city as well. I think that was a really nice moment in this, is they didn't shy away from these, I don't want to say problems, but shy away from that feeling of things being problems, unsure where to go, what to do. And also I think that's part of being a teenager as well, is figuring out what do you want to do, because there's a lot of pressure on us as humans to figure out what do you want to do for the rest of your life, that these decisions you make here will have massive impacts on your life and future later down the line, which is true. And again, just by having this kind of overwhelming feeling, I think that helps. Now, I think it's a tough one to get right, because of the fact that as players, we don't always want to feel overwhelmed. We want to have that sense of mastery. But it's a really, really cool experience that the designers on both of these games have taken the time to try to make sure that they don't shy away from that feeling, to make it understandable that you are going to be overwhelmed, as you were overwhelmed as a kid, trying to figure out how do I manage, relationships, how does money work in the sense of how much should I need? I don't mean like I exchange it for goods, but how to make money, all of these things. And I really liked that. Another thing I like is the vastness of both their worlds, and especially in Friends of Ringo, is that there's always feels there's more to explore, that your small town at a certain point feels massive. I grew up in a small town. This town is way, way bigger than it originally was when I was growing up. They're building more houses and expanding the town. It's almost a city now. But at the time, I was like, wow, this is huge. And then when I got to 18, I felt that this was a small place. I'd outgrown it. I needed to go see bigger things, move to different cities around the country and the world. And I thought that was really cool, because it showed how that scale feels so different as a teenager. You think this whole place is big, even your schools. Then after you get to know it, it feels that of just a small place, or the place that you understand really well. So having that sense of exploration and the size of these maps are really, really cool, because again, you get that same feeling and it emulates that as well. Another thing with both of these games that you cannot get away without mentioning is that your surrounding cast, your fellow characters, because in both of these games, and especially in Ringo, you may not expect that, but they've got some amazing writing in there that make you really appreciate these characters for who they are, and makes you think about who do you want your character to be. And I've really enjoyed that aspect, seeing how they've had an influence. You know, in Persona 3, you have oh man, I'm gonna forget everyone's name, but you have at the beginning your three friends, and one is athletic, the other is got I don't want to say a rich family, but his dad is the owner of a certain store. Another one is very academic and almost seems perfect. Now, as you go on in Persona, you obviously know that they're not. But what I do enjoy is the fact that you take different aspects from these characters. You learn and shape that into yours. You may hang out with a friend who tells you something here, and you're like, well, maybe I need to study harder, or maybe we need to do something to help with the fight. And I think that's really nice here, because your friends in high school do have a massive impact and do shape a lot of your upcoming life, as most friends still happens to this day do. And I think it's fantastic that they've got these well-written characters for it. Now, sadly, I am going to have to end this show here due to the fact that I need to go. I need to pack now before I head off to catch my train. So just to say thank you all very much for listening. If you do want to reach out and talk to me about these games, you can so via Twitter, which is @MaxPairs. You can email your questions in as well, leveldesignlobby@gmail.com. Please do support the podcast. You can do so on patreon.com/leveldesignlobby, where there's some cool perks for all of you amazing gurus. And yeah, thank you all very, very much. And I will catch you all next time.